Hey guys! I'm so excited for this live because I, took a week off last week. It was a well-needed break from Instagram. I don't think I've taken a break from Instagram in like 2 years. So to really just take a break and like not even check Instagram, not come on here, not do a live. It's been a while and it was like I just needed that like little refresher. I was feeling like really creatively just like crushed, and then on top of it, like I'm finishing up Fully Nourished, and so it's just like I've just been like overwhelmed and burdened, and so I needed that break. But I'm so glad I'm back, and I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so excited to do this. I missed you guys. So I'm gonna let the questions start rolling in. You guys can ask whatever you want. As always, it's Ask Me Anything. So Kel just asked, best natural deodorant, not wearing any is not an option. Yeah, I feel you. So I do want you to remember that your armpits have a purpose. A lot of people think that, because in our society, it's like, it's not cool to sweat, it's not cool to stink, and you have to understand that you have lymph nodes. So you have this lymph fluid, right? This interstitial tissue fluid that kind of carries throughout the whole body. Everything you put on your skin gets absorbed into the lymph fluid, and then your body's going to dump that lymph fluid eventually into the blood circulation to be detoxified by the liver. But that requires your movement because the lymph fluid doesn't have a pump like your heart pumps, right? And so the lymph nodes can very regularly get stagnant, especially if we're not moving, stretching, we're sedentary, we're not, moving very often. We can get really, really stagnant. And then on top of it, what happens? We put antiperspirants on, which are actually chemical pore blockers, which stop these toxins from coming out of the skin. And so deodorant is pretty much you shutting down your natural processes of getting toxins out of those very vital places like beneath your breast and near your groin or your reproductive organs. This is why they very often say that this synthetic aluminum can cause breast cancer. It's because it's just sitting there. And so it is important to switch out your deodorant, but I know it can be a rough transition because if you've been clogging up the pores for a really long time, you don't just have to like open up detox pathways. You actually have to like let the floodgates open and have stuff that's been sitting there for a while come out. And so that transition can actually be more rough. Like you're going to be like, oh my gosh, what is this? But there is like an initial detox period. So I recommend what you do is you kind of slowly come off of your synthetic deodorants or your toxic deodorants and start doing bentonite clay masks. Bentonite clay, what it does is actually draws toxins out of the skin. So just mix bentonite clay and water, slap it on your pits, let it dry for like 30 minutes, and then wash it off in the shower. And you can do that like every couple of days for a while, and you'll have to do it less and less over time, but that can really help with the transition. And then I really like the Crystal Deodorant Rock. A lot of people like to lambaste me. They say it's like, well, it's still aluminum. And I'm like, well, it's natural aluminum chloride, and the molecules are really big, so they don't actually get absorbed through the skin very easily like the synthetic aluminum in like toxic deodorants do. But if you like more like non-toxic options, I just can't handle like coconut oil-based deodorants or baking soda-based because the baking soda rips my armpits apart. And then the coconut oil or the shea butter or the beeswax, those things always stain my clothes and I just can't handle it. So I've really gotten used to that aluminum chloride or that Crystal Deodorant Rock. All you have to do is wet it and then you just put it on wet skin like after the shower. It just completely neutralizes everything. It doesn't smell like anything, but you don't have stinky pits. And then if you still need some more, think about doing the bentonite clay masks. Or there's like, I think Primally Pure is a pretty good brand. There's one called Stank Stop by Fatco is a really good brand. You can make your own simply out of like beeswax and some like tapioca starch or baking soda. But those are like pretty good brands, Stank Stop and Primally Pure. A lot of people have also said good things about Native, but I've never personally used it. But yeah, I'm all about the Crystal Deodorant Rock. I don't care if it's slightly toxic or it has aluminum in it. It's not absorbing into my skin, and it's also not going to stain my clothes. Hi, how often do you recommend coffee enemas for liver health, and should you do a saline distilled water enema first? this is kind of up to you. Everyone's so different in what they feel good with and what they prefer. However, it's important to make it a point to not get addicted to enemas. So a lot of people get actually addicted to high volume enemas because they're constipated, and so their body begins to rely upon a lot of volume or high volume of liquid going into the colon. So you want to keep them as low volume as you possibly can, and I personally wouldn't do them more than once a week. They do actually flush the electrolytes, so you do need to replenish those, whether that's in the form of fresh fruit juice or some coconut water or some, water and lemon and some honey, something like that afterwards. And some people do, if you're constipated, remember that a coffee enema is a retention enema. And so if you have a bunch of fecal matter sitting in your colon, you can't fill it with coffee and expect to retain it for 15 minutes. It's gonna feel very uncomfortable. And so in that case, you probably would wanna do just like a quick cleansing enema just to kind of clear waste out of the colon so you can actually retain the coffee enema like you're supposed to. And then some people feel like they don't want to, they have to rinse their colon out after a coffee enema, and so in that case they'll do like just a plain water saline enema afterwards. So it's just kind of dependent on personal preference. A lot of people prefer to do just like a quick cleansing enema and then a coffee enema, but it's not necessarily. But it's good to experiment with all different types of, strategies and then find what works best for you. When to drink coffee or tea. So I would really recommend doing like caffeinated beverages before, I usually say before noon if you have disrupted sleep, but before 2 p.m. if you don't really struggle with disrupted sleep. You also need to understand that when it comes to caffeine, specifically the caffeine in coffee, is it's very pro-metabolic and it raises your metabolic rates, pro-thyroid. So when you're raising your metabolism, you're having to burn more, right? Well, remember, when your body doesn't have fuel to burn because you're not eating enough, what has to happen? Your body has to make its own fuel. And it does that by raising adrenaline, and then adrenaline will completely clear the liver out of sugar, and then the body has to actually raise cortisol. And cortisol will break down your muscle tissues, your collagen, your skin, even sometimes fat, but that's usually the last thing to go, sent to the liver, and then the liver will convert it into blood glucose to keep blood glucose levels stable. So you need to make sure that you're eating before you drink coffee and afterwards, and kind of heeding or acknowledging the fact that if you're increasing your metabolic rate, you probably are gonna have to eat probably sooner after you consume coffee. If you feel feelings of jitterness or anxiety or something like that, then you might not be eating enough before you drink coffee, specifically enough carbohydrates or good sugars. And then you might still need to consume that afterwards as well. So it's best to drink it in between meals, and it's best to not drink it black if you can handle that. So adding some cream, some sugar, just some stuff to kind of mitigate that stress response. Hey girl, thanks for being here. Just switched to natural deodorant. I'm so happy about that. I've done like natural deodorant for like 5 or 6 years now, and my pits regularly don't stink. If they stink, it's on a day where I'm like, oh, I like ate out at a restaurant yesterday or something. You know what I mean? Like it's a day where I didn't have my normal routine. What do you think about spelt sourdough? Great. If you can tolerate it and doesn't bother you, it doesn't like give you bloating or indigestion, there's no problem with consuming grains that are properly prepared. So spelt and even like a properly prepared wheat sourdough is usually a lot easier to digest than like really glutinous rich foods, because a lot of the gluten has been broken down in a fermented like sourdough. Just make sure when you opt for sourdough or you're trying to like get sourdough, you need to make sure it's traditional sourdough, meaning that doesn't have not that it doesn't have yeast added, but that it actually has been cultured or has like let to actually have that sour starter eat some of that gluten. And a lot of like I want to say like corporate or conventional sourdoughs that are mass produced are not traditional, meaning that they do add sour starter to make it taste like sourdough, but it's really just plain bread that they've just added sour to, instead of actually allowing the sour to culture the dough. So I hope that makes sense. Shelby says, hi Jess, I noticed that I have really achy joints around ovulation. Can the switch from high estrogen to high progesterone be a cause? Thanks. Yeah, that's really interesting. So remember that estrogen is directly not great for your bones and your joints, and progesterone is. But remember also, I actually see very regularly that women that have high stress hormones or high cortisol, they tend to have they get a lot of injuries to the joint. They're like pulling shoulders, they're pulling ankles, their joints ache, they're swollen. And why is that, you guys? Well, remember how I said that when the body doesn't have the fuel it needs, it has to raise stress hormones. And stress hormones eat your tissues, including your joint tissue. So you need to be aware of, okay, am I eating frequently enough? Am I eating foods that are anti-inflammatory to me? So, there's so many people in the world right now are like, anti-inflammatory foods are like vegetables, like omega-3s, and not doing dairy or gluten. And I'm just like, too many vegetables can actually be inflammatory, especially if you have an impaired digestive system. Remember that plants have chemicals that protect them from you eating them. And so if you have an impaired digestive system, you might not be able to break those foods down properly, and that can actually be inflammatory. So I really like to focus on if there's any kind of joint achiness at any time of the month, but it could have something to do with estrogen and progesterone, you really want to support detoxification by just making sure you're getting enough protein. And then you also want to make sure your meals are balanced and you're really focusing on lowering stress. So, eating protein, carb, and fat meal every couple of hours, probably 3 to 4. And then you can also actively support detoxification. Like I do in my practice, something called a detox lemonade. So a tablespoon of chlorophyll, 2 tablespoons of organic cranberry concentrate. So the chlorophyll cleanses the liver, the cranberry cleanses the kidneys. And then you're gonna add a squeeze of lemon to support glutathione production, or that master antioxidant. And then you're gonna do some raw honey to really give that liver some fructose, some sugar to kind of keep it going. And so that can be drank a week before ovulation to really support detoxification actively, and see if that helps. But yeah, you want to make sure you're sleeping enough, make sure you're getting that protein, carb, and fat meal every couple of hours, make sure that you're supporting your liver, and see if that helps. Usually that transition, if you're seeing some weirdness around ovulation, there might be too much estrogen at play. Because remember, progesterone is supposed to be that dominant hormone the second half of the cycle. And if estrogen continues to be high and progesterone doesn't kind of overpower estrogen, then you'll really start to get some symptoms. Hope that makes sense. Also, how to get periods regularly. My friend just gets one 3 times a year. Yeah, so remember, you guys, your periods are not irregular. Your ovulation is irregular. And if you are not ovulating, your body is stressed the F out. And so the goal is to get a regular ovulation back, and the goal is to reduce any stressors that could be barriers to ovulation. So you want to make sure that your thyroid's functioning properly. You want to make sure that your stress is low, meaning that you're, eating very frequently. You're eating nutrient-dense foods with protein, carb, and fat. You're not super, slathering chemicals all over your body. There's not a bunch of chemicals in your environment, meaning you're cleaning with bleach and things like that. You want to make sure that you're getting enough sunlight, you're getting outside, you're moving, you're exercising, just kind of the basics, making sure you're sleeping. That's a big one. Irregular periods are very often caused by a lack of sleep. I've gotten people just on a proper sleep schedule and they immediately get their periods back. So really limiting stress just by common sense things, eating more frequently, eating better food, sunlight, movement, sweating, just regular things that you would think are healthy for you would probably be the things that to start on when you're trying to resume getting your body ovulating again. And then once you get the foundational basics down, that's when you kind of move on and start to dig deeper and see what maybe could be preventing ovulation or causing stress. But you always want to start with nutrition, exercise, sleep, sunlight, the basics. Sorry if you can hear that. There's I live by an army base, and there's always army helicopters. I started eating more whole foods, more carbs instead of keto, and I have not lost weight or gain. So you think I can still lose weight eating carbs? I have insulin resistance, and I also have high cortisol. also taking Ovasitol. So you guys remember, unfortunately, weight loss and weight gain are not measures of health whatsoever. We can lose weight with stress hormones. Does that mean that our metabolism is healing? Absolutely not. We'll probably gain it all back later. And so weight loss is a horrible gauge of health. Seriously, end of story. When you change your habits to pro-metabolic habits, sometimes it can take up to 3 months to see weight loss. Weight loss is not the goal, you guys. Metabolic healing is the goal. Your body using fuel more efficiently is the goal. When women have been on keto for a long time, a study just came out, I just read it today, that keto causes insulin resistance. So it specifically causes insulin resistance in the liver. And so when you go off of keto or off of a low-carb diet, you're actually more insulin resistant than when you started. And so you actually have to heal that insulin resistance first with carbohydrates. And so remember that carbs are going to lower that stress response so that your body can begin to actually focus on metabolizing things instead of being in that fight or flight state. That takes time, you guys. That takes some weeks or months to heal from. And so the goal is not weight loss. The goal is metabolic healing. Once metabolic healing occurs, not only will weight loss occur, but you'll be able to stay at a lean and healthy weight without really worrying about it. You know, like the goal is not to constantly diet until you die. The goal is to, you know, go through a period of time where you kind of let your body do its own thing, focus on feeling good, digestion-wise, mood-wise, energy-wise, sleep-wise, exercise-wise. You want to really focus on what's changing on those fronts. You know, do I have better energy? Do I feel like myself more? Do I, you know, think more clearly? Do I have whiter, brighter eyes? You know, you want to think of those things and focus on those small progressive changes, because true weight loss that's going to last is probably going to take 2 or 3 months to kick in from when habit changes occur. And if you want that weight loss to last for a lifetime, it's going to be slow, it's going to be gradual, and it's going to be healthy so that your body, as it's opening up those fat cells, is able to detoxify the estrogens, the toxins that were stored in there. And if we're pulling all this junk out of our fat cells under duress, meaning because of high adrenaline or cortisol, you will see rapid weight loss. But the minute you go back to eating normally, you will gain it all back, if not more. You will blow up like a balloon. And so after keto, you do have to understand you're hepatically insulin resistant, meaning you most likely have more insulin resistance than when you started, and it does take time to get that body out of that stressed out state and into a state of, okay, I can start to burn more instead of store. I hope that makes sense. Thoughts on essential oils, specifically instead of medications, and I remember you saying to not ingest it. Why? OJ. So you cannot ingest essential oils. They're just not, like, it's not a thing. Like, just because an MLM or doTERRA or Young Living said it was safe, it's never been safe. Talk to any aromatherapist that, you know, works with essential oils. Essential oils are not safe to ingest. They're just not. Like, you shouldn't be ingesting them. And just because someone on Instagram is doing it does not mean that it's healthy. If somebody was taking a cyanide pill, would you be like, oh, it's healthy for me? No. And you have to think the same thing with essential oils. Just because people are ingesting them does not mean that they are safe to ingest. And they are not safe to ingest. The second thing is, when it comes to essential oils, you have to understand that plants are very powerful. Not always in a good way. They should be respected, and they should be honored, and they should be utilized very carefully. Essential oils are very abused right now. People use them for just about anything. I even see them applying them to their neck and their thyroid, which just makes me want to fall on the floor and faint and die. Because you have to remember that most plants are slightly estrogenic. The phenols in plant compounds, specifically essential oils, do get into the fatty tissue. Remember that your thyroid is very delicate, sensitive, fatty tissue. And that can actually cause inflammation of the thyroid. It can actually cause the thyroid to work less efficiently, and essential oils still have to be processed by the liver. Just because, you know, it's oil of whatever and not an Advil doesn't mean that your liver doesn't have to process it any less. And so just overusing and abusing essential oils is not a good idea. Now, obviously, if you have a stomach ache and you put a little, you know, coconut oil mixed with peppermint oil on your belly, that's a lot better than taking a Tums. And I think that's, you know, a great situation where it applies. But I don't think you should be just like slathering essential oils all over your body all day long, like the more the better. That is not a good idea. They should be seen as medicine. You don't like say like, oh, you know, Advil makes me feel better, so I'm just going to take an Advil for every 2 hours throughout the day. No. And then on the other hand, like aromatherapy and breathing in essential oils can be helpful. It can help lower stress and make you feel good. Just remember that there are certain essential oils that are very estrogenic and should be avoided at all costs when you have a thyroid issue or when you have estrogen dominance or low progesterone. Things like lavender, for example, are just so estrogenic. So you just kind of want to be very careful and treat plants with respect. You are the first place I heard about no nuts or seeds. Everyone always says they are so healthy, such conflicting info. You know, you have to kind of look at how foods interact with the body. I look at the biology, I look at how your cell is interacting with fuel. If your goal is to have a lean and healthy weight and have your cells, when I talk about metabolism, I'm talking about cellular respiration or heat production. Your cell will take glucose and rapidly utilize it to rebuild and heal itself, right? That's the whole goal of cells. And there are certain compounds that stop this process from happening or slow this process from happening. And that's why I regularly talk about PUFAs here. And so a lot of the women here are very damaged metabolically. They cannot burn fat, they cannot lose weight, they're on really calorie restricted diet, and if they raise their calories at all, they'll just immediately gain weight. They have thyroid issues, PCOS. These are severe metabolic imbalances. And if you're truly trying to heal your metabolism, I try to make you aware of the compounds that are going to absolutely suppress your ability to burn through glucose more efficiently. Because I know that most of the women here, their ability to metabolize things properly is impaired. And so I think that PUFAs and like concentrated sources of PUFAs are going to absolutely cause you to gain weight. I've seen it over and over and over again amongst women. They've been told by nutritionists and doctors and this and that, you know, get most of your fats from nuts and seeds, and they've never been sicker in their life. They've never been fatter in their life. And I don't think that that is fun, and I just want the best for you guys. And so, you know, when I'm sharing information, I'm not trying to be controversial. I'm just sharing information that I wish I would have known for literally ever before I, you know, pounded nuts and seeds for so long. Remember, you guys, I've been paleo for a very long time, and then I went keto, and I've completely shifted 180 because I began to really realize that it was breaking my body down, and I didn't understand why. And so, you know, the things that I talk about here are from that experience. You know, I was keto and paleo for so long. If I thought that these diets were the best thing for women, I would be utilizing them, but they are not. And the science just over and over again is just mind-bogglingly pointing in this direction. And this is a very there is like an underground group of people who are starting to wake up to this. This is very new. And so I'm kind of more like, this is something that's up and coming. This is not something that has been well known for a while. And so, you know, because I'm so on top of it when it comes to research and making sure that I'm understanding metabolic function and biology, I might talk about things that is very contrary to what is being talked about everywhere else. And, you know, you guys can take with it what you will. Like, I always encourage you guys to do your own research. I'll always point you guys in the right direction. If you need studies, if you guys want resources, I'm always willing to give you guys links and things because I want you guys to actually see it for yourself. I don't want you to take my word for it. I don't want you to take anyone's word for it. I want you to be your own best healer. You know what I mean? And that includes questioning everything you hear, even when it comes from me. Because I'd be a hypocrite if I wanted you to do your own research and then like, oh, but take everything I say as Bible. What is the cause of low temperatures? Low 96s during luteal phase and 97s during follicular phase. How do I raise them? Low temperatures is usually a sign of like subclinical thyroid function, meaning like your thyroid's not working optimally. Remember, like I said, cellular respiration or cellular metabolism, meaning that your body is taking glucose and nutrients and making heat out of them or producing energy, is a sign of health. And when that is low, that's usually a sign that your body is dysregulated. The energy is dysregulated, meaning that stress is suppressing your thyroid function, or your thyroid function is just suppressed in general from not good habits, not eating frequently enough, not eating enough carbohydrates, not eating enough bioavailable proteins, getting too many toxins in your life, not getting enough sunlight, nutrient deficiencies, not eating the right diet for you. This is why I'm constantly, you guys, talking, like, I'm so against like vegan diets, and I'm so against just like this new age idea that like protein and green vegetables are the only thing that's healthy for you and everything else is like inflammatory and bad, because there's so many nutrients that women are missing out on. For example, like almost every week I have a new client come to me that has been cutting out dairy for 3 years, and they have every sign of being deficient in vitamin E and vitamin A and calcium, the 3 things that they're missing out when they cut dairy. And so it's like, we have to really, if we want to heal and we want our cells to work optimally, we have to flood our body with nutrients, and it is and nutrients that the body can actually take, break down, and absorb. And that looks very different than just a diet that's, you know, dairy-free or gluten-free or paleo. And so it's very important to kind of have to lower stress when you have low temperatures. You have to raise those temperatures with good food, periodic food, not fasting long-term, sleeping well, exercising well, getting enough sunlight, and getting outside, doing things you enjoy. Really just truly lowering stress on the body so that the body can do its thing. Your opinion on metformin as a prescription to treat PCOS without birth control. Honestly, you guys, you know, there have been women that have seen success with metformin, I won't lie, but it's kind of like, what would you consider success? If a loss of 5 pounds is what you consider success, then by all means, you'll probably get success. But if that success is not worth it when it comes with the fatigue and the B vitamin depletion and the exhaustion and maybe even the depression and the hair loss that can come with metformin, then it's like, okay, you have to be like, okay, what does success mean to me? Some women truly do see benefits with it, but a lot of times and very often I see something called the metpression. Most clients that are on metformin long-term only see the loss of maybe 5 to 10 pounds, and they eventually kind of get like really low energy and fatigued. That is not everyone. Every woman responds to it so differently. So it's like one of those things where I think trying it out is worth it. I personally tried it out at one point. I felt awful. It did make me lose like 10 pounds, but that was about, you know, it. And I was very depressed, and I like had hair loss, and I hate it. I hated how I felt on it. I never felt like myself. So it's kind of like one of those things when it comes to medications, it's okay to experiment. There's nothing wrong with it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And if it does, great. So I think that medication should be a very personal thing, a very gut-based decision, like what feels right to you, and talk to your doctor about it, and talk to, you know, whatever other practitioners you're working with, and just make a decision that makes the most sense for you and your health. There's no right or wrong to that. You know what I mean? What if I'm unable to get grass-fed or organic meat and chicken? Where I live, it is very hard to find or beyond pricey. Use online services. So Thrive Market has wonderful sources of meat, Butcher Box, US Wellness Meats, and, you know, shop the sales. Whenever bones are on sale, buy a bunch of bones and keep them in the freezer. So, you know, there are so many services and sources now of high quality animals that it's, you can utilize those before you just like kind of like shrug your shoulders and say, I can't get access to them. Even in places where you do have access to a lot of high quality meats, many times they are very expensive. Like where I live, like I do have access to them at like my local health food store, but I still sometimes utilize like US Wellness Meats and stuff like that. So there are options, and I really recommend you check those out. I mixed up the phases. I'm at 96s during follicular and 97s during luteal. Yeah, that's what I figured. So you still might be ovulating, you know, because you're getting that spike of temperature, but you're just metabolically low. Diet to lower estrogen, mine is too high. Yeah, so you want to, fresh squeezed orange juice is really effective at lowering estrogen. That's why I'm always drinking it, you guys. Well-cooked mushrooms are really good at lowering estrogen. Eat a raw carrot every single day for lowering estrogen. And then just overall, your goal is to now raise your metabolism so your body can actually start working through the stored estrogens that are in your fat cells. Remember that vitamin E is very helpful. It's an estrogen antagonist, so it can help really neutralize estrogens and get them out of the body and the liver. I really like vitamin E. It's hard to find high quality vitamin E though. I really like a brand called Unique E. You can get it on Amazon. And I mean, it's really like eliminating estrogen is a whole thing. It's not just something where I can give you bullet points. You want to really lower the amount of estrogens that are in your environment. You know, if you're drinking from plastic water bottles, stop doing that. If you're using really like harsh chemicals in your house, stop doing that. If you're using laundry detergent that has estrogens in it, you got to switch over to non-toxic. If you're using a lot of hygiene products that are really toxic, that's going to be, you know, a source of endocrine disruptors or high estrogens. So you really want to actually eliminate estrogens in your environment. And then remember that some people they're very sensitive to estrogen, and keep in mind that pesticides are estrogenic. So, you know, try to eat organic as much as you can afford. And then also there are phytoestrogens or plant estrogens. And so some people that are eating lots and lots of nuts and seeds, they see that they can't get their estrogen dominance issues under control, or lots and lots of grains and legumes, which are also phytoestrogenic. So it's kind of one of those things where you kind of have to start to slowly eliminate those excess estrogens. And then if it's still a severe problem, then you want to actually support the liver, and you want to actually start like really limiting even like phytoestrogens and things like that. What do you suggest for high cholesterol? Have pretty low levels of good cholesterol and high triglycerides. Saturated fat I thought isn't good. Remember that high cholesterol is caused by a thyroid issue. So if you have high cholesterol, you probably don't have enough T3. If anyone has high cholesterol, they need to get their T3 levels checked. Always, because many times they have low T3. And keep in mind that your body actually manufactures cholesterol. Cholesterol does not come in your trap. Cholesterol is manufactured by the liver and the gut. They're two very separate things. The cholesterol that comes into your mouth has nothing to do with the cholesterol in your blood. And that is well known in the medical community since like the late 90s. Yet doctors still think that whatever. Anyways, so if you have high cholesterol, remember that cholesterol is a precursor to every single hormone in your body, including stress hormones, progesterone, DHEA, estrogen, testosterone. And so if you have elevated cholesterol, many times that means that your body's having a very difficult time turning cholesterol into every other hormone in your body. Why? Because what it needs to do so, T3 and vitamin A, is deficient. And so the body just keeps making more and more cholesterol, and it's not getting converted. Or another thing that can happen is your body is pumping out cortisol. And so your body actually has to elevate cholesterol because you're pumping out so much cortisol, you have to have the cholesterol to make that cortisol. And so when somebody has high cholesterol, they need to actively lower stress on the body. Saturated fats is what's actually going to allow your body or your cells to process glucose efficiently. So you really want to look into Ray Peat and type into Google Ray Peat cholesterol, and he has a wonderful article on that will really help clear up some confusion. My friend is on a low FODMAP diet for IBS. What are your thoughts? IBS is caused by issues, and it's just like if you said like, oh, my muscles are weak, I'm just not going to work them. It's the same issue. You know, I think that low fiber diets are actually good for most people because the low fiber won't feed the bacteria that is in the small intestine. But remember that IBS is normally caused by small intestinal bacteria overgrowth or intestinal overgrowth that's not supposed to be there. Because remember, the small intestine is supposed to be sterile. And so many times IBS can be cleared up if your friend's doctor knows what they're doing, to have them look into SIBO, have them look into small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. A lot of times they'll just prescribe an antibiotic called Xifaxan that will clear out the small intestine of that bacteria. And sometimes that can absolutely completely clear up IBS, like in conjunction with a low fiber diet. How's your red light therapy going? It's going really good. I mean, I don't have like a lot to say, I guess. I mean, you know, like I have all this baby hair growth, which is awesome. I see a lot of new hair growth, and I also feel really good after I do it. Like, it's weird because, you know, the red light it's not hot, like it's not warm, but you can actually feel your cells heating up. It's so weird. Like, the sensation on your skin feels warm, but then you like feel your skin and it's not warm at all, and it's like, whoa. So it actually does increase the, you know, your cellular respiration or your metabolic rate. So I really enjoy it. I have always enjoyed red light therapy. The one that I've created, I don't see any difference between the ones that I've like experienced before. So I really am enjoying it, and for, you know, less than $40, I think it's a good investment for sure. It also just is like very relaxing, and it really helps me de-stress at the end of the day. And it also helps me wake up in the morning. So I love it. Tips for getting back into a normal cycle when you're on a student budget and can't get blood hormone tests done after having a first ever missed period. So you remember, you guys, whenever you say you missed a period, you did not miss a period. You missed an ovulation, or you're having a late ovulation. This is why it's so important to track your ovulation, you guys, because if you don't know when you're ovulating, you don't know when you're going to start your period. And if you have a missed period, you don't know if you ovulated late in the cycle because you didn't check it or didn't track it. And so that's the first thing. Start tracking your cycles, taking your temperatures in the morning, tracking your cervical mucus, tracking your cervical position. Then you can start to see, oh, I didn't even ovulate this cycle, so that's why I haven't gotten a period yet. So your goal is to not focus on the missed period. Your goal is to focus on the missed ovulation and what was the barrier to ovulation, what stressors are occurring. Was I lacking sleep? Was I overdoing it on the alcohol? Was I eating too much junk food? Am I really stressed out? I mean, it sounds like you are because you're a student, but like, you know what was happening around ovulation that could cause it to come late, or that could have caused it to not come altogether. Because remember, a lot of times women that like have missed a cycle, they're actually still stuck in that follicular phase. They haven't ovulated yet. And so like once they ovulate, then you'll have a period usually around like 10 to 14 days afterwards. Best magnesium to take: B complex and multivitamin. I need these, but not sure what to take. When it comes to magnesium, applied topically and internally are both important. They both have they help with different issues. I think they can both be really therapeutic. So for topically, I really like doing like Epsom salt baths with like a whole bag of Epsom salts, not like a cup, like a whole bag. And then also magnesium oil, which you can find on Amazon. And then internally, making like a magnesium bicarbonate is by far the best. I don't actually really like pill supplements. I've like slowly kind of transitioned away as much as possible. There's very select few that I now use in my practice just because I think they cause more irritation than good in most cases. And I think it's important to heal the body with nutrition first and then add supplements later. When it comes to B complex, I actually really like brewer's yeast. Brewer's yeast is very rich in all B vitamins. The only thing that doesn't have is biotin. So brewer's yeast can be really helpful. You can like make cookies with brewer's yeast, or like little energy bites or whatever, and then you can take that. Or if you're going to do a B complex, remember there are certain B vitamins that are very irritating and they can be actually very allergenic. And so the B vitamins you want to focus on are B1, B2, B3, sometimes B5, and B9 or folate is important, and then B12 can be important as well. So Thorne's B complex is pretty good for that if you just want a complex. And then multivitamins, I just prefer eating grass-fed liver and smoked oysters 1 time per week and use that as my multivitamin. And then I also will be including a recipe for a liquid multivitamin in Fully Nourished so that you guys can kind of make one out of herbs. So I really like food-based and nutrition-based supplements as much as possible, and limiting the amount of pills you take, because pills are not what your body knows how to process, and a lot of times the additives in supplements can actually be very irritating and inflammatory and allergenic. Is it possible to get your period regularly but not ovulate? Confused by conflicting info I've seen. Yeah, bottom line is yes. It is a little bit more uncommon to, like, especially if you're having like a very regular period, to not ovulate, but it's possible, especially if you have a lot of estrogen playing a role, because remember that estrogen is what's responsible for thickening the uterine lining. And so you can still have a lot of estrogen continuously thickening the uterine lining without actually ovulating and making progesterone to thin it. So sometimes women do have anovulatory cycles, periods, but very infrequently are they regular. But if you tend to have like a really long, lengthy cycle, or it's heavy or clotty or something like that, it could be a possibility that you aren't ovulating. So it is possible for sure. Because to have a period, or a bleed, I should call it, to have a bleed, you just need estrogen thickening your uterine lining. But to have a true period that's actually shedding uterine lining and that egg that wasn't fertilized, you had to have ovulated. So there is a difference between a bleed and a period. I hope that makes sense. I love everything you're saying. Also true, and simple things can change your life, but people don't realize how simple it can be to heal their body. Yes, and honestly, you guys, I get really sad. I mean, of course I get angry too, because being on Instagram, there's just so much misinformation being shared. And a lot of times people are trying to sell something that, either they've created or they don't really know, what they're talking about. And so they make you really confused. It's like, don't drink coffee, drink matcha. And I'm like, well, matcha is full of fluoride, so like probably not. It's just like it's just like a lot of trends and things like that just take hold, and then it becomes a fad and becomes the cool thing. And then it's like people feel so confused about what they need to be doing. And I'm like, always stick to the basics. And if you're not doing the basics, like getting enough sunlight, moving regularly, doing things that you love and enjoy, eating nutritious foods frequently enough and eating enough, sleeping well, it doesn't matter what supplement, what compound, what thing you do, it doesn't matter how much money you spend, you will never feel better until you get those basics down. What are some natural ways to heal a cyst on the ovaries? So, remember you guys that like ovarian cysts can be caused a lot of times by estrogen. Very regularly do I see like people that have high estrogen also have ovarian cysts. So the goal is to get yourself making progesterone. If you're ovulating but you're not making enough progesterone, then please watch my progesterone story on how to actually make enough progesterone. You also want to lower stress, but if the ovarian cyst is very, very, I've heard women very, very inflamed. I've heard of women actually using castor oil packs. Now, this is not medical advice, so I highly recommend you research it on your own. I haven't really looked into the safety of it for ovarian cysts, but I have heard women saying that they work wonders. Also, magnesium applied topically can be helpful. And progesterone. So I've actually seen clients that their doctors actually prescribe them bioidentical progesterone to get rid of ovarian cysts. So those are some things to maybe think about and look into. My hair falls out a ton, always did as a kid, but got even worse as I got older. I lose tons in the shower, it's insane. Also, scalp is itchy a bit, have white buildup. Yeah, so, remember that hair loss is it's highly metabolic issue. It's not something as simple as your hair is falling out. Remember, your hair follicles are like little mini organs. And when the scalp starts to calcify or your hair follicles are stressed out, you will see hair loss occur because your hair follicles have high need for nutrients. They need proper amounts of T3 or that active thyroid hormone. They need the right amount of glucose, and stress hormones need to be low. Also, estrogen can damage the hair follicles. Blood sugar imbalances can absolutely damage the hair follicles. And remember that blood sugar imbalances and insulin resistance is caused mostly by stress. And then also just not eating the right types of fats. Remember, if you're eating lots of processed fats or you have in your past, saturated fats are where it's at when it comes to healing the hair follicles. I mean, I've had clients come to me with severe hair fall. And just I just had an email from a new client, she knows who she is, who she's just been implementing what I was talking about for 10 days, and she's already seeing her hair fall almost get to a point where it's not even an issue anymore. Her hair's really stopped falling out simply by just eating frequently enough, getting protein, carb, and fat in, taking a break when her body says she needs a break. When she is hungry, she eats. She's prioritizing sleep, and she's making sure she's getting most of her fats from saturated sources and doing lots and lots of healing bioavailable proteins like bone broth and collagen. And just those changes alone within 10 days have completely gotten her hair loss to come to a halt. So, it's just very important to understand that hair loss is a symptom of a bigger issue that's occurring. Hair loss is not the issue. There's something bigger going on. How many times should we eat a day and why? I don't really get full after a meal and I want to keep eating. Well, first you want to make sure that you're consuming your food. And I mean mindfully consuming your food. A lot of times we're distracted while we're eating. So remember, eating is an experience. It's not just getting food into your stomach physically. It's also smelling your food, looking at your food, tasting your food, seeing your food. A lot of people are watching TV while they eat, or they're on their phone. And I'm yeah, of course, you just scarfed down a meal without even consciously acknowledging that you were eating. So the first thing is to stop, pause, spend 10 minutes eating with just your food. Don't be on your phone, don't watch TV, just eat. And that can really help with not feeling full after meals. The other thing is making sure your macronutrients are balanced, protein, carb, and fat. And then also, you know, I just recommend eating every 3 hours. So eating within an hour of waking and then eating every 3 to 4 hours max. And so that's going to look different for everybody. Some people need to eat more often at first, sometimes every 2 hours, and then slowly they can get to that 3 to 4 hour marks. But, you know, it just depends. So how many times you're going to eat per day really depends on when you wake up, what you do throughout the day, that kind of thing. Some people will eat up to 7 times per day. So it just kind of depends on what you do. But I really encourage you to just stick to that 3 to 4 hour rule. What are some natural ways to avoid or heal ovarian cysts? Kind of already talked about it, but remember, detox estrogen, detox estrogen, detox estrogen all day long. And eat that raw carrot every day. I forgot to mention that. That is very helpful for getting estrogen out of the body. What are the benefits of bee pollen and raw honey? Bee pollen can help with immunity, and it does have like nutrients that, you know, that we don't have in a lot of other foods. I'm not like a huge bee pollen fan, but hey, if you like it and you enjoy it, go for it. When it comes to raw honey is very antibacterial and antifungal. It's also very rich in fructose, and it's just like a really incredibly like healing food. It's been used for thousands of years as a healing and sacred food. And so I think we should use it too. If that's the case, then we should continue to use it. So it's really delicious. It can sweeten up things, but it has, you know, medicinal or therapeutic benefits. What is the best way to test blood sugar levels? Which one, fasting or non-fasting test is better? So testing blood sugar levels, remember that fasting blood sugar or your morning fasting blood sugar reading is not really a great reading of where your blood sugar is at, because think about it. You haven't eaten for 8 to 12 hours. So why is your blood sugar high? Well, remember, there are other hormones that have an effect on blood sugar. Glucagon, growth hormone, cortisol can all cause the body to break itself down and turn your protein or your tissues into glucose. And so when you have a high fasting blood sugar reading, that is a much bigger sign of a stress issue than an actual blood sugar issue. I think a really good sign of testing blood sugar is a oral glucose tolerance test, meaning like how you're clearing sugar after 2 hours of drinking that sugary solution, or doing postnatal glucose. So, you know, just having a meal that has carbs in it and then taking your blood glucose like 1 to 2 hours after eating. And then obviously you can test your insulin levels, you can test your hemoglobin A1C, but, you know, it's best to kind of see how your body's actually clearing glucose after you consume glucose. And if you're not consuming glucose, remember you guys, it's not the glucose's problem. It's a cell problem. And so do we just restrict the thing that our body needs to burn for fuel, or do we fix the way the body burns fuel? That's the difference between what diet you're going to choose, right? My OB and cardiologists are recommending that while recovering from severe preeclampsia, I need to lose 30 to 40 pounds to help my heart. I know you don't like my fitness pal, but it has been the only way I've been able to lose weight before. How do you suggest I balance macro tracking and eating to metabolically heal? I'm not like against my fitness pal. I think it can be really helpful to track. However, restricting calories is a horrible way to lose weight. Usually, if you're having a hard time losing weight after a pregnancy, there's a thyroid issue at play and there's a progesterone issue at play. And so you really got to get those levels checked ASAP to make sure that you are metabolically able to burn fuel, or restricting calories is just going to make the problem worse. Also, women after childbirth very often have high stress hormones, specifically prolactin and cortisol. And those can also really affect the way that the body burns fuel. And so it's fine to track things in MyFitnessPal and look at patterns. I just don't think that restricting calories is a great way to go about it. Because here's the deal, you guys. Every time we lose weight by restricting calories, we're slowly suppressing our metabolism further and further. So the body is now going to burn less fuel. And so we have to continue to eat less and less and less to lose weight. And so what happens is, because our metabolism is so suppressed, meaning that, like I've always said, when you drive a Ferrari faster, so say you're gonna drive a Ferrari and you're like, I'm gonna go from 50 miles per hour to 100 miles per hour. Would you put less gas in the tank, or would you put more gas in the tank? I'll let you decide. But if you put less gas in the tank and you go faster, what's gonna happen? You're gonna burn out a lot quicker, right? And so the body, what happens is your body needs to conserve as much energy as possible in a famine. And so your body does not know the difference between calorie restriction and famine. And so your body will push the metabolic rate down as slow as possible to burn at the least amount of fuel as possible. So when you go back to eating a normal amount of calories, anything extra your body stores as fat or as fuel for later. And so to heal the metabolism and lose weight properly, you need to make sure your hormones are optimized. And that includes thyroid. And if you restrict calories, you are directly suppressing your thyroid. And so it's like this very vicious cycle. So the proper way to lose weight is to make sure the thyroid is functioning optimally. And you cannot do that until you test it. Is breast tenderness during the luteal phase a sign of estrogen dominance? Should I be concerned if I experience it regularly during this time? What remedies are there? Yeah, so good looking out. So usually breast tenderness is a sign that you have some estrogen in the tissues. Your breast tissues are very sensitive to estrogen, and so very often women experience breast tenderness when they have a lot of estrogen at play. So the goal is to raise progesterone. And then also make sure your body's detoxifying estrogens properly. Vitamin E can be very helpful for breast tenderness. And also, like, eating a raw carrot every day to detoxify estrogen is really helpful, and then really supporting the liver. And so I actually have a whole story highlight on supporting the liver, so make sure you check that out. But it's very important to really make sure your body's getting rid of estrogens properly, make sure you're pooping every single day or more. You want to at least poop 1 time a day, but better to have it more often than not, 2 or 3 times, because the more you're pooping, the more you're clearing estrogen. A lot of times women don't actually correlate their estrogen dominance issues with constipation, and it's one and the same, baby. So you got to make sure you're getting the waste out as quickly as possible, and then if you need to add extra like detoxification things in, that can be helpful as well. Did you ever read Beyond the Pill? What's the best way to boost progesterone before period? I never actually read through Beyond the Pill, but I've heard that it's great things about it. You know, I don't have any opinion on it or anything. But the best way to boost progesterone before your period is to actually make sure that you're supporting your body all cycle long. Remember that the corpus luteum is what actually makes you progesterone. And the corpus luteum needs lots of nutrients and it needs a good environment. So I recommend you check out my my story highlight on progesterone. Check out my story highlight labeled menstrual cycle, which both offer really good information on how to actually get your progesterone levels up. What are some ways to heal the pancreas? So, you know, the beta cells in the pancreas are specifically important. And they are very sensitive to polyunsaturated fats. That polyunsaturated fats actually damage them. Endotoxins stemming from the gut or really imbalanced gut bacteria can also really damage the pancreas. And so pregnenolone and progesterone are known to really help with pancreatic function, as well as I've heard some people using castor oil packs on their pancreas, which I've never looked into that, so don't take my word for it, like look into it yourself. And really focusing on the right fats is very important. Like I said, the pancreas is so sensitive to the fats you're consuming, and so eating saturated fats and staying away from polyunsaturated can be very, very beneficial. Hey, yay, Jess, it's great to see you. I was wondering how long progesterone cream takes to absorb. I've been applying it on the wrist like an hour before work, then I have to wash my hands. Yeah, I'm sure that an hour is enough, but you can always do it like somewhere else, like your inner arm or your inner arm, like here, you know, not at your wrist, so that, you know, because you know that your habit is to have to wash your hands, you might have to adjust where you apply it. But an hour is a good amount of time, but it's better to leave it on as long as possible. Your hair. Oh, thank you. I just pinned it back with 2 bobby pins. Bobby pins. What's the difference between organic grass-fed yogurt and regular yogurt that is plain but made from pasteurized milk, not organic or grass-fed? The difference is that the cows ate something different. And so conventionally raised dairy, those cows are being fed GMO corn, GMO soy, and even though dairy tends to be one of the cleaner proteins, because remember that the body of a mother prioritizes only the best for its young, and so the liver takes care of a lot of the contaminants that would be in dairy products or that are in like meat products and things like that. So but the healthier the mother, and the mother should have been eating what she's supposed to be eating. For example, cows are meant to eat grass. That can be the difference between milk and really healthy milk. So the goal is to consume animals and animal products that are living in the environment they're supposed to, eating the foods that they're supposed to, getting exposed to nature like they're supposed to. But it's kind of one of those things where if you can only afford conventional and you do okay on that, why stress about it? You know what I mean? So it is best to get the most high quality food that you can afford, but on the flip side, you don't want to cause stress or financial strain where you don't have to. I get stomach burn from OJ. Any alternatives or a way to fix the heartburn? Might be acidity. Well, are you fresh squeezing your orange juice? That's the first thing. And then the second thing is it needs to be pulp free. A lot of times the pulp in the oranges can really irritate the digestive system. So try fresh squeezed orange juice and strain the pulp and then see if it's still a problem. Is maca helpful for regulating hormones? I personally don't love it. I think that if you're going to take it, it needs to never be raw. Remember that maca is a goitrogen, or it's a cruciferous vegetable, and it's never been consumed raw in history until a stupid Western culture started to eat it raw. So it's always been traditionally boiled and fermented, and so if you're going to do maca, it needs to be gelatinized and shouldn't be raw. But I think that it can actually be like pretty anti-thyroid, so I don't really love it. But some women really love how it feels. So it's just kind of one of those things where you have to kind of know for yourself. You mentioned low carb or keto and leg cellulite. Can you elaborate on that aspect, please, and how to help that matter? Yeah, so remember that keto, I mean, it really depends. Like, of course, you guys, like, I'm not trying to pick on keto. I just want to let you guys know that it's probably not the best if you want long-term health, but a whole foods keto diet is way freaking better than like a standard American diet. Let's be honest here. However, you know, burning through fat, specifically the fat that's stored on your body under duress, keep in mind that the fat that's stored on your body is from years ago, the food you were eating years ago. So I'm guessing that's probably crap that's stored in your cells, specifically lots of polyunsaturated fats like canola oil and soybean oil if you were eating the standard American diet. And so you have to understand, if you're forcing your body to burn through fat cells under duress, meaning that ketosis literally raises your stress hormones. And so it forces your body to rapidly move through what's in the fat cells. Opening that up quickly is making your body process all of that junk that's been stored in your fat cells for years, right? And so that can be inflammatory, it can be estrogenic. And so, you know, when it comes to cellulite, your goal is to actually get yourself detoxifying estrogens properly and get yourself detoxifying those polyunsaturated fats properly. And if you're still forcing your body to make its own fuel, you will continue to burn through the junk that's in the fat cells under duress. And so the goal is to make sure you're getting enough fuel to not force your body to break itself down for fuel. And then in the meantime, you know, doing just regular like massage, like I really like body brushing for cellulite. The fascia blaster is really helpful. So you're breaking through like the fascia, and that's kind of like pulling on and dimpling your skin. But the goal is to really get estrogen under control and to make sure your body is protected as much as possible from processing those polyunsaturated fats. So vitamin E can help. Making sure you're getting enough saturated fats can help. Making sure you're getting enough glucose or sugar or carbs, whatever you want to call it, can help. So those are some things that you want to look into. Can hirsutism growth stop if hormones regulate? Absolutely. I used to have horrible hirsutism like all between my breasts and underneath my belly button. It's gotten a lot better, and I only now, like, I'll get like a really thick coarse hair like when I'm really stressed out. And it shows me that like stress totally plays a role in hirsutism. And I thought that for so long, but now like there's research to back it up. And so yes, you can see that improve. Now the worse that it's gotten, remember, like, you have to always understand that when you get diagnosed with something or you have like a severe imbalance, remember, it's years and years have have happened to get you to this point. And so it's going to take some time to get back, right? It's a reversal. It's not like, oh, I'm healed instantly. It's going to now be a reversal. And so things usually, you know, change in a gradual, slow way. And sometimes it can take a long time to see improvements, but you want to be, you know, stick with it. I've also heard that topical DHEA can be helpful for hirsutism. I've personally never used it, but I've heard that it can be helpful. Why does everyone love ACV? Do you use it? What for? I think everyone likes apple cider vinegar. It's just like one of those things that's been like a fad. I use it. It can be really helpful for supporting digestion, and it can be antibacterial, but also like if you're really sensitive or you have a really imbalanced digestive system, it can cause more harm than good. And so at that case, you want to actually use pasteurized ACV because the bacteria in it are bothering you. But it can be like helpful. Is hair loss with men just genetic? No, I think it also has a metabolic role as well. I really recommend, if you guys are like wanting to know the science behind hair loss, I really like the book Hair Like a Fox by Danny Roddy, which you can get on Amazon. His book's like $3.99, I think. And it is like very scientific, don't get me wrong. Like it's gonna go probably over your head a lot, but it has a lot of good information in there. Do you recommend eating breakfast even when you're not hungry at all? Hell yeah, girl, because you're not hungry because you're not starting up the metabolism in the morning. So do it 2 weeks consistently and then watch what happens to how you're hungry in the morning. You'll be hungry. What are some simple meal options if I can't eat dairy? Okay, sorry guys, Instagram's cutting me off. I hate when this has to happen, but if I haven't gotten to your question, just ask it again because I'm gonna go live for another hour. I'll see you in a second.